What's up, bikers? I just realized I didn't even have my mic in front of me. You would think 148 episodes into this, I would have my stuff together, but guess what? Here we are. Anyways, thank you all for showing up and listening to today's episode 148 with Bivo. God, we just had a conversation about this, and I swear to God, I just probably screwed it up. But let's just go with it for right now. It's Bivo. Anyways, they make metal water bottles, and I had all kinds of questions about this as soon as the first site came to me. I was like, wait a minute, you can't squeeze that. That doesn't make any sense. Do I have to take a lid off every time? We're going to find out about all of that in a minute. But before we do that, thank you to everybody on Patreon. You guys are supporting this channel and the biker channel. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. If any of you guys are interested, you can get some early release videos. You can get some stickers. You can get some different things. Swing by there and help me out. It definitely, it puts beer in the fridge. It buys camera gear. It does all the things that keep these channels going. So I really appreciate everybody out there. You guys are my sponsors. So until the YouTube dump truck of money shows up in my house, which it's been quite a while, I don't think they're coming. You guys are the ones that keep this thing going. So I really appreciate everybody out there. Those of you guys that haven't followed me on Instagram or Facebook, please do that. Go over to @BikerB1. You can get something for free over there. Like, find out the new bike that I'm riding. Let's see, if you're on YouTube, you can hit the subscribe button or the thumbs up. And if you listen to Apple Podcasts, that would be really rad if you go over there and write a 5-star review, because those reviews is what like triggers the podcast algorithm to know you guys that I'm doing something right. So it's really good to read those as well. They're like super motivating. So those of you that don't want to write a review, you can just put a comment down below on the YouTube channel. So I like to respond to those as well. Nonetheless, let's go ahead and bring Karina back on. And hey, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Did I say it right or did I screw it up? I
already screwed it up, but that's okay. It's Bivo, but that's okay.
I told you that because we had that conversation, I was going to mess it up. I knew it was going to happen. So
for everyone, he had it right before the recording started. So, but it's all good.
It was like the last thing that I heard. That's what it was.
Yeah.
So let's get it right. So it's Bivo.
Bivo, correct.
How'd you guys come up with that name?
It's a combination of to drink in Latin and to live in Spanish.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
Was there like a big board and like you guys took hours and hours to come up with it, or?
It did take a while. Though we have a person who helped us out from the beginning, our brand director, Mark Beard, and he's very good with words. And he came up with that one pretty quickly, actually. And when we heard it, and saw it, that the 4 letters is kind of nice. And he did the logo right away too. So it was actually a pretty quick process, but still fun to come up with. And it's always hard, I think, in the beginning to name things because it's so permanent. So yeah, it was fun to make that decision, but.
And you're like, we made up this word. We should be able to get the domain, and you get online and nope.
That's right. Yeah, it's drinkbivo.com. Yep.
Yeah. So for everybody that's going to be searching this later, definitely drinkbivo.com. So BIVO.com. That's pretty easy to remember. That's a bummer with the URL. I know that's always because I do IT. That's my day job.
Yeah.
So I'm always like, okay, this is a great name, and then I go to domain search. And I'm like, and start over.
So, yeah, it's amazing. That actually probably was the hardest thing. Is just like what hashtag isn't taken on Instagram and that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, totally. So you are one of the founders?
Yep, that's correct. Yeah, my husband and I founded it together.
How long have you guys been doing this?
We launched in late 2020 and we came up with the idea in 2019. So it took us about 18 months to develop the bottle before we were able to launch it.
So your husband and you are both cyclists, and like how did it come about? You're on like some grueling ride and thought you could do something better, or?
Yeah, kind of. So we have a daughter who's 4. Now we have a 1-year-old son too, but when our daughter was just starting in daycare, we were out skiing. So I was a cross-country ski racer. So big endurance enthusiast. I started riding after college. But we were out skiing together and we didn't want to feed our daughter out of plastic. And when we were realizing every time we exercise, we drink out of plastic ourselves. So we went home and quickly started searching for alternatives to drinking out of anything besides plastic while exercising. And there really wasn't a good solution. And particularly in cycling, there was nothing that fit in a bike cage that was designed to fit in a bike cage. So when we discovered that hole, we were like, all right, we got to jump on this. We were actually product developers in footwear. So we knew how to make product and we knew supply chain quite well. So that piece of the puzzle was a little bit easier for us as a startup. And yeah, we just started designing it within the 2 weeks after coming up with the idea.
Yeah. Did you guys like work at the same firm, or you guys met each other in college, or just so happened to both be doing the same thing?
Yeah, I started the parent company of Keen Footwear, and I lived in China for them for the first few months. And then I moved to Portland, Oregon to be in their innovation group. So after 5 years there, a big part of my job was coming up with new designs, like manufacturing techniques and setting up manufacturing relationships across the globe. So after being there for 5 years, I started my own firm called Line Concept Creation. It was a footwear product development and sourcing agency. And so when I was leaving the parent company of Keen, is actually right when I met my husband. He was working at Icebreaker Merino. And then about a year later, he left and joined my firm. So we ran that together for about 10 years.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
How do you even get into that? Like to me, it's not like you go to college, you're like, I want to do like supply chain for footwear.
No, I had a degree in European studies and a minor in math. So it made a lot of sense to move over to China. I worked at an outdoor store in high school over the summers, and I was a cross-country ski racer. So I was definitely into how product worked and how it improved performance. And I met the owner of Keen, and when I met him and told him I was interested in product development, he suggested I move to China. So I was able to secure a job through them, where my first task was credits for factory defective product. And so I just would go to factory, looking at how things were made. And it was just like kind of that show or the podcast, how things, I think it's how you make that. It's kind of like, it was just a really good introduction to how product was made, and see it go down the production line was super interesting.
Oh, wow. Right on. Yeah. And how you were like just early 20s in China for the first time?
Yep.
That must have been a little overwhelming.
Yeah. So I grew up in Western Massachusetts, and then the second half of my high school was in Vermont. And then I went to UVM, University of Vermont, and ski raced there. And so my biggest city I had ever lived in was Burlington, Vermont, which I think at the time was probably like 25,000 people. And then I moved to a city that was like 11 million, Guangzhou, China.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was definitely culture shock, but I've always really enjoyed traveling and experiencing different cultures. I lived in Europe in high school for 1 year. So I think that element of it was a really good new experience for me. And I absolutely fell in love with product development when I lived over there.
Yeah. Where at in Europe were you?
Norway.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I spent a little bit of time in Norway, up in like the way northern part of it. So
Nice.
yeah. It's definitely really pretty up there.
Yeah, it is.
So when you were checking out all these factories over there, was it like anything like, because you were working under Keen, was it just like footwear stuff, or like did those factories do like all kinds of things?
Yeah, it was mostly footwear. There was some bag manufacturing that we were part of. So I went to a few different factories, but for the most part, it was footwear. Once in a while, we did tours of something special. Like we did a carbon fiber factory tour at one point, just to understand how different processes work. It's kind of good to just see like different types of manufacturing and see if there's any way to implement that into the product we were making. So we did do some exploration that way.
When you're looking at that stuff, I would imagine that it's similar to the bike industry, where there's probably factories that are like kind of like ripping off other people's designs and building that. Is it like as rampant as like one would believe from, looking at the internet, or is it really like not that much?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the factories that you're in, and it definitely is a concern that you have to be aware of. But I think there's so much international business at this point that you really, if you're working with the right factories and being good partners with them, I think that there's definitely ways to avoid it. It's something you absolutely have to be aware of and protect yourself with. But it's they don't want to mess too much with your business because that's ultimately their business and their reputation as well.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, isn't it like those like China, for example, they wouldn't really like some Chinese citizen or something like that, they wouldn't be subject to like our patent laws, would they?
So
Is
you
it-
can actually get protected in China. Yes. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
So then there's something separate. So then at that point, then you would have some kind of like legal standpoint to try to like chase them down or shut them down from copying your stuff.
Yeah. I mean that I think and so I've never been in that situation. And Bivo is small enough at this point
Right.
that we haven't run into that, but that it's definitely something you don't want to have to fight because the expense of it and also just like being able to mandate it is I think very challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you said your husband and you were skiing and you decided to start looking for these like how you can do this something in metal, or were you thinking metal initially, or were you just like anything other than plastic
Yeah, anything other
or
than plastic, but I think metal, there's all like Hydro Flask and Swell and Yeti and those brands are out there they've kind of paved the way in that world. So I think definitely our minds went to stainless steel or aluminum.
Mhm.
And I think the big piece for us was just like you always have to unscrew the lid or they aren't designed to fit in a bike cage. So we definitely focused on the performance piece of this
Mhm.
space.
Yeah, yeah. So how do you go from being on the ski slope to like starting? Like, what do you just go home and draw a picture? You just like have a bottle of wine and talk about it? Like,
Yeah, it started with the bottle of wine. And then I think that so just having the experience of footwear product development was huge for us in starting it because we had really good relationships with industrial designers. We understood the process of product development and 3D printing and testing. So that piece of it was something that I feel very fortunate I've had a background in. Because I
Mhm.
think honestly, if I just had this idea, I really wouldn't have known what to do with it other than the fact that I knew exactly, I already had a relationship with a few different water bottle factories. And so it was not as daunting. I think for us, the daunting piece was like, I don't know, getting our like first telling everybody we were going to do it and getting our
Mhm.
name out there. And the marketing piece of it isn't as natural. So to actually create the product, the first step we did was actually just do a lot of market research, bought some water bottles, tried to see if we could find any solution out there. And it was crazy to us that this wasn't something that somebody had already created before. Um,
Right.
so then we started working with our industrial designer and we gave him design inspiration and pieces of the product that we wanted to make sure we hit. So like universal bike cage fit was a huge piece of it. For me, I'm like a noise person, so I didn't want to have a rattle in the cage. So
Mhm.
finding a material on the exterior that wouldn't rattle if it moved around a little bit in the bike cage. Um,
Oh, that makes sense.
yeah, so just giving the designer elements of what we were looking for. And then
Mhm.
in this instance, we actually hired a third party engineer who he previously worked at NASA, which we talk a lot about on our website. But we really wanted we wanted the water to flow quickly. That was important because we did see other sport caps out there that just like trickled water.
Mhm.
We wanted to make sure that you could drink as quickly and as easily as out of plastic. So that was
Yeah.
a huge piece for us.
Yeah, I had these like Arctic Yeti style cups made for my channel for some like merchandise stuff.
Yeah.
And the lid that they shipped it with, which I didn't really put any thought into, is like the hole's just like a little bit small where it's enough that it like slightly irritates you that it's not pouring fast enough.
Yeah.
So that's like standing around in my house. So I could understand like being, thirsty on the trail or on a road ride or whatever. And if the water's not coming out fast enough, like it's pretty much going to be like a showstopper, right?
Yeah. Yep. For sure.
And then you don't have the ability to squeeze either. So, so when you're initially doing research, I mean, obviously you're thinking, okay, well, I want this to have like a certain kind of aesthetic look to it. But at the end of the day, like a bottle that's going to fit in a bike bottle cage, there's not really a whole lot of like different that you can do. It's already like predetermined that it's going to be cylindrical or whatever.
Yep.
But the lid is really what it comes down to for you guys. So you were looking for other things that were like similar, or you were thinking maybe it was going to be a straw or like a pop-up kind of like Camelback podiums or something like that, or?
Yeah. So in the beginning, what we knew is we wanted to be able to open it the same way as a normal cycling bottle. So we felt that the cyclist is used to like tipping their water bottle up into their mouth, squeezing, and like the same motion. And it's something that's so inherent in what you're doing when you're riding bikes. So we didn't really want to change too much of that. There was one bottle that we had found that fit in a bike cage that did have a straw that you could suck out of instead of just tipping and pouring. But we felt that, the cyclist didn't necessarily want to change their motion of drinking, as well as, one comment that we get a lot is actually our bottles are so easy to drink out of. You don't lose a breath. Like you can drink and you don't have to like stop and lose a breath. So that was something we were trying to avoid too, like from drinking out of a straw, for example, that so many of the metal bottles have.
Yeah, I think I was watching, you had like a YouTube short or something like that on your channel, and you said the whole bottle empties in like 8 seconds or something like that.
Yeah, about 8.5 seconds. Yeah, which is actually faster than you can squeeze plastic. And our goal was we have to match it. And so when we beat it, we were pretty happy. And then we actually had conversations. We're like, okay, we actually could make it a little faster, but we're like, we don't want it to be so fast that people take too much water all at once.
Yeah.
We did even have conversations about actually slowing it down, but
people. I would think at a certain point you wouldn't want it too fast because, I mean, I don't know if like rationing is the right word to say, but like when you're riding, like you adjust like how much you squeeze by like how much you want to drink. And you're also like kind of keeping this tab of how much is in there, regardless of like how much it weighs. You know what I mean? Like you kind of do like, there's a couple different ways that you're keeping track of that. So I guess with that being said, I think you said the weight is kind of negligible, right?
Yeah, it's 6.5 tablespoons of water heavier than a plastic water bottle. Essentially, we like to compare it to how much water, just because it really is not very much at all. So this we have 3 models. One is a 21-ounce single wall water bottle. That's the first bottle we launched with, called the Bivo 1. And we went with single wall to start with because we wanted it to be lightweight. We knew that the weight issue would be something that cyclists would have to overcome. So that was a concern of ours. And then we also did a lot of research as to what size is the most common, and 21 ounces was the most regularly purchased for cycling bottles. So we came out with that first. And then about a year later, we came out with a 25-ounce Bivo Duo. And that's also single wall. So that holds 4 ounces more water. And that actually outsold the 1 pretty quickly because it holds more, and people do actually tend to drink more water with Bivo. We get that comment a lot too, just because it is so easy to drink out of. And then we also launched with our first insulated bottle this past summer, and that's 21 ounces double wall. So that one is heavier, but it keeps water cold, and it actually prevents water from freezing. So people are really enjoying that one for both winter and summer riding.
Interesting. So the keep it from freezing part is really interesting. So my experience with double wall would be like similar to the cups that I had made. Like that'll keep ice in it for 8 hours. Is your water bottle similar?
Yes. Yeah. So we actually tested, I think, at like 16 hours, but we claimed 12 hours cold. And I think people are so used to plastic insulated bottles that they're like, we've seen a lot of people saying they freeze them overnight so that they stay somewhat cold on the bike. But we've actually had people tell us that they've had to remove the amount of ice that they put in the bottle so that there's enough water for them to drink, because it doesn't melt as fast as they would have expected. So yeah, it keeps water cold for 12 plus hours.
Yeah, that was the first thing actually that came to my mind, was that I would definitely not put as much ice in, because I'm counting on that being liquid by the end. So that's volume. So
yeah, for sure.
So is the 21-ounce bottle that's insulated, how much heavier is that?
Gosh, you're testing it's about double the cost, or double the weight, sorry, but it's 25. We did use a thinner gauge, so it's 25% lighter than the average just standard vacuum insulated bottle. Yeah,
it's lighter than the standard insulated bottle.
Yeah, there's a new technology we were able to use a thinner gauge metal.
Oh wow, so that's really interesting. With the single walled bottle, you had said that you had a covering on it for sound. Obviously you sell them that are colored, and then you have the brushed one. So the brushed one doesn't do that.
Yeah.
That sound covering though, does that provide any other like thermal advantage, or is it?
No, it doesn't actually. People do say they feel like it stays colder, but I think it's honestly the taste. It tastes like water, and I think that warm water that's been in plastic starts to taste like plastic. So I think the taste perception changes that for people. But no, it doesn't have any thermal properties, but it does have extra grip. So that's kind of nice too for in the hand and in the cage. It's like 50. Some people love the raw. I think that there's stainless is making a big comeback in the cycling world, so people love the stainless look. And the shape has actually made a bigger difference in the noise piece of it than we originally anticipated. So the shape of the bottle alone helps prevent excessive rattling. But like if you have a metal king cage and a metal Bivo bottle, you will hear a little bit of rattle. And so that silicone coating that we have does help prevent that.
What's the difference in the shape that is like introducing it to stay better?
The engagement with the neck of the bottle, so like where the cage kind of comes in and grabs onto the bottle, even with that shape, there really wasn't a bottle that was designed to fit in those previously. So I think like if you have a straight bottle, it's going to start dinging against that little piece that comes into the bottle and start making that noise.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So you have these two different designs, and I guess to back up a little bit, you guys had prior experience with a bunch of manufacturers, and you had somebody help you with the design of the bottle itself. Then how did you then start solving the problem with the lid?
Yeah, so actually the whole concept came around like shotgunning a beer. So if you think about letting air into the bottom of a bottle or bottom of a can and opening the top, the pressure equalizes and pushes the beverage out. So our first thought was actually, okay, could we put a hole in the bottom of the bottle? But that obviously would leak. So we just kind of started coming up with ideas around how can we get pressure into the bottle or air into the bottle essentially, so it can push the water out. So we had all sorts of different prints that we worked on, 3D prints like of a 3D modeled design. And we had a variety of prototypes, and we used plastic bottles to start testing and just cut a bunch of things up and poked holes in them and hot glued them together and just did a lot of testing. And we did have this engineer too that we worked with. And I think the balance was you can come up with really complicated designs that would work really well. But the whole point of this was to make sure it was easy to use too, and like not too many pieces. And cleaning, for example, is a really big thing that cyclists talk about. It's hard to clean their water bottles. And so we want to make it not so complex that it would be too hard to clean, for example. So the ease of use was important. So we just kept we would have all these like crazy ideas, and we'd keep talking about them. And then we're like, okay, we have to come back to simplicity. So that was a huge part of every conversation we had around developing the bottle, was just like, okay, is it simple enough?
Mm-hmm. So does it have like a straw attached to the bottom, or I mean, can you talk about it without
Yeah,
like
yeah,
giving
no,
away the
so,
trade
yeah,
secret?
so I think you'll be getting a bottle soon if you haven't already. But so it has on the lid on the underside piece, it has a straw, and so that's attached to this vent hole essentially, and that's where the air goes in. So our nozzle, I know that not everybody will watch this because it's a podcast as well, but so you just open and close like a normal sport nozzle.
Mm-hmm.
And then this little B, which is actually the Bivo B, that hides a vent hole. And so when you open it, it opens into air, and then you just pour. So it
Oh,
goes
wow.
really fast. Yeah. And the other thing is it doesn't have any, a lot of times when you drink out of a spout like this, you get air in the water. Like it's kind of plugging to let the air in so that that water comes out. And this is just a super clean stream of water. So you don't get you're not drinking air at the same time.
Yeah.
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 But yeah, this has a straw inside. So this straw that's attached to the bottom of the lid, which is fully removable for cleaning. That's what lets the air in.
Got it. So does that like connect to something that's in the oh wait, though, so the air is coming through the lid up in the straw and actually into the chamber, and then that's what's helping it push it out then. Okay.
Yep.
So it's not like the straw is using to suck the water. It's the opposite way around. So it's like you're
exactly.
using it.
Yep.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
So those of you guys that are listening, basically the lid sort of looks like if you're familiar with the Camelback bottles where it has a straw on the inside of it, it's essentially looks like that, but you're, like I just said, not drinking out of that straw. And the aesthetic of the bottle is really like it looks really clean. It looks really good. And when you pointed out the B on the top, so when she was talking about that, it's actually like the nozzle that you're drinking out of, the way it's shaped below it, it makes it look like a B for Bivo. So did I say it right?
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, no, and that's really cool. I like stuff like that where it's like just a really like small kind of touch, though. It's kind of like the Apple attention to detail kind of stuff, you know, and that's really neat.
Yeah. We had our brand person. He was with us, like I said, right from the beginning, and he touched the product a lot too. So I do agree, like having those touch points is really nice, and it was great to have him as part of the early design process, because I don't think we would have had the B on there without him. So that's pretty cool. Yeah.
So I would imagine the coating then really helps with if it's like if it's cold and your hands are wet and you're touching metal, it sticks. So does the coating? I would assume the coating kind of stops that from happening.
Yeah, I actually, so I like I said, I was a Nordic skier, so, or I am a Nordic skier. So I use this in like a carrier in the winter around my hip. And I used to use the raw because it slides in, and like the silicone has a little bit of stickiness to it. So it sticks to fabric a little bit more. So I used to use the raw in the winter. But now that we've changed the exterior a little bit, so it's a little bit less sticky, and it's nice because your gloves stick to it better. And then it also, like when it gets wet, it's not as slippery, because it's easy to drop a bottle in the snow or whatever, and then the whole outside is wet. So yeah, the exterior coating definitely helps with that grippiness for sure.
And then so I don't know if that's just like certain materials that do that when it's cold. So when you're using the raw one, does like if it's wet, is it gonna like stick to your fingers if it's really cold out, or?
No, I've never had that happen.
Okay.
And I've been in cold, like, so we live in Vermont. We're up in Richmond, Vermont. And so like this, 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, it was -14. So it gets cold here. And I skied, a few times with this for like 2 hours at -4. And no, I never had that problem actually. And it is nice too, because the nozzle is so open. That's part of the design to get water to come out so quickly. But that actually helps the nozzle from freezing too, because there's not very many nooks and crannies for the water to go around. So that's a nice feature as well.
Yeah. I don't know how to word this question without it sounding weird, so I'm just going to go with sounding weird. Like, does it like, how do I explain this? You ever drink the smart water bottles? They're like, it's like the brand smart water, and they have like a nozzle on the end that's almost like a fire hose almost.
No, I don't know.
Anyways, when you drink those, like the way that the water comes into your mouth is pretty similar to what you're saying. Like it doesn't have extra like air in it and whatnot. And it's kind of like more pleasing, like for some reason.
Yeah.
So I was assuming like the way that you're explaining your nozzle, it probably has a similar effect because when you're doing that with no air in there, it's a lot more like drinking out of a glass then.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. We that has been on our site from reviews from customers writing in. Yeah, people say it's like drinking out of glass. They say it's fun to drink out of, which I always think is funny. And that it just is like a very pleasing experience. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it took you guys a year, you said a year and a half to get to market?
Yep. We did hit COVID in there. So
yeah.
We actually at one point we kind of paused because March 2020 hit. We were like just getting our first 3D prints from the factory, and we're like, should we go? Like this doesn't seem like the best time to start a business, maybe. But then the bike industry was doing well enough, and so we paused for probably a month, and then kept moving forward.
Mm-hmm. So what was that launch experience like? You guys got a freaking crate of bottles to your garage, and you're like, okay, we're gonna do it.
Yeah. Actually, so COVID hit. Our daughter was 18 months. We were living in Portland, Oregon, and we were worried about childcare shutting down. So our work in footwear had done a lot. We've done a lot of work with China, and one of our employees was from China, lived in Portland, and her family actually was like, you need to come back to China. It's going to get crazy in the US. So we were kind of like, our fingers were on the pulse quite maybe a little early compared to the rest of the US, just knowing that we were dealing, who we were talking with every day. So we left Portland in anticipation that things were going to shut down. We thought we would leave for like a month or 2 months and come back. And then we moved in with my parents in Western Massachusetts. So they have a winery that they turned into a winery when I was in college. And so we lived with them for 16 months and used their winery warehouse as our spot for launching.
Oh, cool.
That was our first warehouse, my parents' place.
So what was your initial like launch? Was it, okay, we're going to sell this like direct to consumer, or because of your background, you already had like ins with retail, or what?
Yeah, originally we had planned on going to retailer and direct to consumer, but then because of COVID, so we started a pre-order in August of 2020. So we did only direct to consumer for launch, and that was honestly just because all the bike shops were mostly closed, or people weren't shopping.
So how do you have people to like? How do you promote something that nobody knows about?
Yeah. Through my background in cross-country skiing, I had a lot of connections with cyclists. All my friends were cyclists, and I did ride quite a bit too. And then while we were developing the bottle, we actually sponsored the Cyclocross Crusade, the Cross Crusade out in Portland, which was a huge cyclocross race series, actually.
Okay.
And I think like Portland and Pacific Northwest and then the East Coast were two huge hubs for cyclocross. So we sponsored that event with a bike wash, and just talked to people about our idea. And that was kind of like that was a bit nerve-wracking because we didn't have the bottle developed, and we started talking about the brand. We had a brand name, we had our brand logo. But we didn't have anything to show people. And so
that must have been like quite the thing. Like you're driving there and like, okay, we're going to tell everybody about this thing that we don't have. Like, just imagine, you know, you guys had to be like feeling like, are we a little crazy right now?
Yeah. And probably people thought we were a bit crazy, but I think that it was maybe because our brand name did get out there. And the big goal for us was getting people's email. So people would sign up for our email list, and we would send them updates on the development and when we were going to launch. And so we had a pretty good launch email list. And so right from the beginning, we were able to actually reach enough people that we could sell our bottles. We also got into some pretty good press. We had hired a press agency who helped us get in the right places. So right when we launched, we actually were in different publications. But yeah, through my parents actually, so at their winery, they also have a cyclocross. They had a cyclocross course. They still host some cyclocross bike camps. And so even just through that connection, we had a lot of people that we knew would help spread the word. So we've definitely bootstrapped as best we could. We've done a small friends and family round, but otherwise we've bootstrapped, self-funded, and tried to spread the word organically.
So no like Kickstarter campaign or anything like that?
No, we didn't do a Kickstarter.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
So I know we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier when you were talking about materials and you were looking into, but like, what is wrong with BPA, like kind of plastics instead of like, why go down this metal route?
Yeah, a lot of research actually, in the beginning, we're like, okay, we're doing this for health reasons. So there's two things that we really believe in is one, reducing waste. We did a lot of surveys with avid cyclists in our prior to the bottle development. And we found that the avid cyclists can go through a crazy amount of bottles, like up to 64 per person per year. I mean, that was kind of like the high end of what we found. And then others would go through like 12 a year or something. So the amount of bottles that are being used is
what are they doing to their bottles? Oh my God.
I know.
I'm a mountain biker and I'm like dropping mine and running them over and stuff. And I don't think I've bought a new bottle in a while, definitely longer than a year.
Yeah. So I think what the big held up for people was mold buildup in their bottle. So they're hard to wash. And so it was kind of, and then like you talk to these pro teams, like EF announced that they came out with like 35,000 water bottles last year. They used 35,000 water bottles last year. So it's just, I mean, the amount of they're kind of looked at as disposable. So we want to combat that. But honestly, our first idea was around health, and there really isn't enough data around what plastics do to our bodies. We unfortunately don't know enough. But what we do know is that chemicals do leach into the water that are in plastic, in particular when they're scratched. So like if you do wash them with a brush and can scratch the inside of plastic, that's actually when it starts leaching more, as well as high heat. So like if you put them through the dishwasher, for example, that's really not good for plastic. So they're hormone disruptors.
All the things that I do to my bottles, basically. Thanks for making me feel better about myself.
Yeah. So it's there's a bunch of forever chemicals that are found within, and forever chemicals never leave the earth, essentially. So we are finding out more and more. Actually, we just posted up on LinkedIn a study on plastics in water in plastic water bottles and how many chemicals they're finding inside. So essentially, you're drinking chemicals that you don't really know what are doing to our bodies because we don't have enough studies done yet. But we do know that there's a lot of microplastics out there, and that they just found microplastics in our blood for the first time, as well as within babies. So it's a problem. I think that we've all gotten really used to drinking out of plastic, and it is super easy. But hopefully we can make a little bit of a change here.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely like the right idea, because in my mind, like, let's just make the assumption that, humans have evolved over time, and plastic is not something that has been there for a long time. So your body like doesn't adjust to things in a couple of generations, so I would imagine that almost any substance that you start putting in your body, like more than how we've like grown to adapt to, it's not going to be good. I mean, like you even see that with like, let's just say sugar, and how much people have been able to eat sugar now in the last couple hundred years compared to how we've evolved, and I can't logically think of a reason that you would be like, oh, drinking plastic's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's scary. I mean, it's in everything. And so I think, the more and more aware you are too, the scarier it is. I think it's
Yeah.
like every soda can is lined, for instance, with plastic. And so it is everywhere, and we're learning more and more. But I think there'll be more and more studies too.
Yeah. I think that it's also one of those things that not to diminish its value at all. It's also like a trendy kind of thing as well, is like get rid of all the plastic stuff that you
Yeah.
have. So like that helps as well. I mean, I know um I'm not a person that's like overly concerned about the amount of plastic in my life, but it also like makes sense to me, like what I just said a minute ago. And we recently like replaced all our Tupperware with glass,
Yep.
just because it was like, I just like you see how that stuff degrades over time, like just from like putting in the microwave or whatever. And you're like, I just can't like wrap my head around like this being okay,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. And that scratching, I think that's what you really want to look out for too. It's just like the scratches within the plastic. That's when it's time to move on, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And then you also mentioned the high heat thing. So like that for me is like at the end of the day, I'm lazy. So I'm gonna put everything in the dishwasher.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that your bottle's dishwasher safe.
Yep. It is. Yeah. The body of the bottle can go in the dishwasher. The nozzle and the straw from the lid, those actually are fully removable, and those are food grade silicone. And so those can also go in the dishwasher. The lid is tested as safe in the dishwasher, but we don't recommend it. We just wash it by hand with mild soap and a sponge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Why don't you recommend it?
Just because I think that plastic shouldn't go in the dishwasher.
Yeah. So it's a personal
The high heat is definitely something that you want to avoid.
Mm-hmm. What if anything, do you think you made any mistakes in that first year and a half?
Yeah. We actually, when we first got our shipment, our first purchase order arrived at my parents' house. We found out the exterior coating was peeling off. So we actually had to postpone our launch by 3 months. We had to fix the problem and then launch after that. So that was our like big mistake moment. And honestly, what happened was we couldn't go over to our factory, so my background again is in manufacturing, and I worked with probably 30 different companies in the time I ran my footwear development agency. And I would always, like, my number one recommendation to them is you have to be at the factory for the first time you do your first production run. And so unfortunately we couldn't do that because everything was shut down. And so we did have a team over in China that went and saw our production and made sure it was looking good, but something went wrong in the timing of when the coating went on, and it started peeling. So that was like a pretty devastating, like, oh shit, I don't really know what we're going to do moment. And then we just, kept moving forward and launched about 3 months later. So, the pre-order still the pre-order still launched when we originally intended, but people just had to wait longer for their bottles. Everybody was so nice and understanding. And I think people appreciated that we didn't send bad product, because it was only, I don't know, probably 50% was not good, but it was hard for us to know what was bad and what was good. So we just held back everything. And I think people appreciated our diligence to sending out quality product.
So does the supplier at that point, like, did they take a hit on that, or was it all just you guys like had to kind of?
Yeah, we worked out a deal with them. I think we split the problem. Yeah.
Wow. So you said that you had some connections with retail aside from just the direct to consumer. How did you get into that, like, retail, or is it like local, or did you get something national right out the gate, or how did that go down?
Yeah, right away we actually said no to retail, just because at that point we had changed our business, like the way that we were operating enough that we didn't want to chase wholesale. And so we just started accepting people who emailed us. So it was definitely word of mouth. We had a few shops that we had talked to prior to launch out in Portland, Oregon. And so we worked with them a little bit, but honestly, actually, that was completely word of mouth. For the first full year, we really didn't reach out to any retailers, but several reached out to us when they heard about it. Because it is such a novel, like it's the only option really out there now. So when people heard about it, they would reach out and start selling them.
So are you in some bigger, like, because to me, it sounds like it sounds like an REI type of product, or, something along that lines, like, without a doubt,
Yeah, we're in some East Coast REI stores here. We're in MEC in Canada, all doors in Canada. So I think there's 21 doors. And then in about probably 45 other retailers across the country. And we're actively expanding that at this point, because we know that cyclists and outdoor people like to go to their local shops. In particular, cyclists, just like you go and get your bike tuned and you get your accessories there too. So we know that there's this like really nice connection with your local shop.
How like, what kind of like volume were you doing in the first year then? So like, how do you even like judge like, hey, we should order 50,000 bottles or we should order like 500? I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. We did some interesting, just like my husband is quite good at this piece of it, as well as our product manager and marketing person, Peter. They did some really good analysis of major metro areas and tried to like understand the percentages of early adopters and really analyze deep into how many bottles we could sell. And I think the first year, I don't know, we were within hundreds of bottles. Like we've run out of a few styles. In particular, the insulated, we underestimated the amount of demand there would be for that. But we've been pretty tight on inventory, making sure we didn't purchase too much. But this year I think we were like 1,000 bottles off of, or no, not 1,000. Sorry, we were like 500 bottles off of what we predicted. So I think that it's just kind of really good.
That's amazing
analysis. Yeah,
that's amazing to me. I know some different people in my professional career that do that kind of analysis, and I just don't understand how they come up with it, because I'm just like, I'd pick a number out of a hat or something,
Yeah, no, that was actually part of my husband's job at Icebreaker. When he worked there, he was a demand analyst. So part of that strategy came from his background in that department.
What's the turnaround for you guys to get an order?
It's about 4 months. Yeah, it was 5 to 6. Now it's shortening now that COVID is easing. So it's about 4 months.
So do you go out and try to patent or trademark or whatever your bottle, or what do you do to protect it?
Yep. We are patent pending in, I can't remember how many countries, I think 36 countries. So we partnered with actually an agency who really loves to ride bikes. And so they've been our patent attorneys from the beginning. So we're still working on that process. It's a really long process, but we're patent pending, which means that we're protected.
Yeah, it's definitely a long process, and I would imagine that like you definitely want to be protected, because it's I feel like it would be fairly easy to reverse engineer. You know what I mean? It's not like
you can buy it and see it, and so for sure.
Yeah, we the company I work for is a robotics company, and a lot of times we don't do patents, because in our mind it's like, by the time that somebody would do the research and figure out how to do what we're doing, we're already doing something else. You know what I mean? So it's like, you guys will have it, but you'll be like still 10 years behind, so but something like this, like 100% you want to be protected. How long does that last? Isn't there like a term on that?
There is a term. I actually don't know the terms of when ours comes out, but I mean, it was shockingly, I kind of joke about our goal was to get water to come out really quickly, but it's actually pretty hard to keep water in too. So, engineering a bottle is in footwear, for example, we were working with intolerances of like 2 millimeters, and now we have so much more tight.
Yeah.
So
thousands of millimeters now.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was definitely a learning experience to figure out how to engineer this bottle.
So I know when I've talked to some other people that are manufacturing things, there's like really high cost for like the mold or something like that. Is that something similar for your product or?
Yep. And actually, so it seems crazy, but there's about 25 different molds to make this whole bottle between the lid and the bottle itself. So, the molds are expensive. And I think it can range for the lids. A super simple lid will probably be 10,000. You can go all the way up to like 40,000 for a really complex lid.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. So, that's just there's a lot to it. It's not as easy as some people would think. You just kind of hook up with some manufacturer and be like, all right, I want to do this.
Yeah. Although that was kind of interesting. That was a bit different for us too, coming from footwear, where like we always came up with our own. We had a design that we would manufacture to, and so we had to work with the development team at the factories to develop the product and make sure it looked the way the designer intended it. But water bottles, the industry is different in general, in that like there's a lot more just like, oh, I'll take this water bottle off the shelf and I'll put my logo on it. There's a lot of that happening, whereas there's not as much independent engineering happening. So that was a bit of a learning curve for us too, and that the factories weren't actually as used to working on engineering a specific product for one unique brand.
Yeah, for the most part, they're like, here's the 10 different lids that we use, and here's the 20 different bottle shapes, and pick one. Tell us some colors, and we'll print whatever you want.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, because I mean, for the most part, when you go look at water bottles, like there's a few different options. Like the lids, there's a couple of different options, and yeah, I can totally understand that. That makes sense, and it's not something that. I mean, like we initially said, it's like, this is the shape of a bottle. You know what I mean? Like, this is how the bottle cages work. So unless you're going to like get everybody in the world to buy a different bottle cage, you can't really change much about it, So let's talk a little bit more about the lid. So I think on your YouTube video, you were saying that you have to push down and then pull up to open it. Is that accurate, or?
No, you just push down to close so that water doesn't pour out, and you just open it. That's like a normal sport nozzle. And that was kind of a huge part of our goal, was just to like make it the most normal compared to what people are used to experiencing. Yeah.
So, and it looks like the shape of the water bottle that has more of like the rubbery kind of nozzle that you can just like grab with your teeth. It's not super hard.
Yeah.
And then you said that the straw and the lid is like silicone.
Yeah. So we went with back to the scratching of plastic. We wanted to have wherever your teeth, like you can see on a lot of nozzles that your teeth start to scratch the plastic. So we wanted anything that was touching your teeth to be food grade silicone, because silicone is inert. So like you see in a lot of bakeware, for example, so you can bake in high heat. And nothing leaches into what's in it. So that's why we decided that the straw that was sitting in the water, as well as the nozzle that your teeth were touching, could be food grade silicone.
Yeah, because I think, didn't Specialized make a water bottle recently that has like an internal silicone lining or something like that?
Yeah, it's like a glass silica. So sand is actually what is in, basically, it's, I think, glass and silicone, and so it's some sort of coating that they have that's like glass, and so it, I think, derives originally from sand.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you originally had your one bottle. What was it like by the time you're coming to market, you're already working on the second design, the bigger one, or was it you just saw how it responded? And
yeah,
then
Yeah, we had a good product expansion plan, and we knew that that was going to be our second bottle. And so we were in the development process of that when we launched our first bottle.
Mm-hmm. And then obviously you have the 21 ounce insulated. Is there plans for that to be bigger as well?
Smaller, actually. We have one coming out in just a little over a month. It's going to be smaller. And so part of the problem with insulation is it takes up a lot of space.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have to have air around it to keep everything cold.
Mm-hmm.
So fitting on mountain bikes was a big, mountain bikes in women's frames was important.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually we're coming out with a smaller one that will fit better on smaller bike frames or more aggressive geometry in mountain biking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's funny. We do actually get asked a lot for bigger bottles. So I'm sure at some point that'll come out as well.
Mm-hmm. Where do you see your company as like long term? Do you think it stays with bottles? Do you see it kind of bleeding into some? I mean, because obviously you have this lid that is, in my opinion, like it's kind of a game changer for that type of container. Let's just call it that.
Yep.
I mean, one of the complaints that I would have with the hydro flask is that you have to unscrew it, and to have something that's easily openable, like the lid that you have, I mean, like it bleeds into a lot of other areas.
Yeah. Yeah. We said we call ourselves a performance hydration company. And that gives us the space to move into other areas of the hydration business. And then we definitely see ourselves going outside of cycling. Like I said, we bootstrap this. We're trying to be very targeted and make sure that we gain a good market share in cycling before we expand too quickly outside of it. But honestly, we did a survey recently. I think 95% of people said that they're using their bottles outside of cycling. We know that there's a lot of space. There's a lot of performance areas that people would really love these bottles, like golf. Golf is one that comes up actually quite a bit because it fits in a cup holder in golf carts. So I know, even like I'm a big runner too, and running is another opportunity. So we'll definitely expand into other sports and then into other types of hydration products as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. Like my wife and I both use those Arctic cups a lot, and just having a lid that's open or a straw or whatever that's in the car, it's always kind of a drag. So it's like to have something that was a little bit more like a water bottle would be great.
Yeah.
We put like fruit in our water a lot. So
Mhm.
like lemon, or sometimes she'll put like strawberries or something like that in there. And how does that affect your bottle? Is there anything with that would?
No, yeah, so it's stainless steel, so flavor really doesn't hold on to the metal. Being able to put it in the dishwasher is hugely helpful. And then the straw, you can put that again in the dishwasher too. And then we also sell it with a squeegee, so you can clean it out nicely. So no, I think, these are meant for different sports drinks. We know that people put them in there all the time. We tested them with 10 noon tablets at once to see if it would the pressure would be too much for the nozzle. So we did a lot of testing around the tube, but yeah, feel free to put whatever you want in that.
Yeah, so you don't have to worry. I know that's one of the things, like with my bladder and my Camelback, I used to always have like, here's a bladder that I'll put Gatorade in, and here's a bladder that I'll put water in. Because it seemed like once you put something in it, it changes the way that your water would taste forever. So it'd be like, yeah, I don't want to do that,
Yeah. Yep.
So I guess the big question is, like, what does this thing cost compared to a regular bottle?
Yeah. So if you're comparing to plastic, it is more. We start at $35 for the 21-ounce raw. And the insulated is $44 for the raw and $49 for the silicone coated version. So we're pretty comparable in the metal space. That's definitely a learning curve in the cycling world, just because people are so used to drinking out of plastic, and plastic bottles are obviously cheaper. But yeah, I think once you start comparing it to metal, it really makes sense.
So you said 35 to 50 is what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. So, I mean, I think at the end of the day, some of that stuff you don't do because of the cost. Like you're not like, obviously, like if the cost was too high, you're like, okay, well, this isn't worth it to me. But
Yeah.
I think some of that stuff you recognize, like this is something that's going to last a lot longer.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say other companies like Hydro Flask have kind of paved the way for you to be able to have a price point like that. I think if there wasn't the popularity of things like Hydro Flask or like the cup that I showed earlier, um, that's a big leap for people to make from like a $10 water bottle or maybe a $25 water bottle. I think I use those insulated ones from Camelback, the podium ones. I think they're
Yeah.
like $25 or something
Yeah.
like that.
Great. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So realistically, to like upgrade to something like this that's metal, it's not much more. Um, then what about like the wear of them? Like, is there any like concern of like, hey, you drop this thing, it could like crack or bend, or that's gonna mess something up, or
Yeah, so we've had a few that have gotten run over by cars. They definitely do dent if you drop them from high up. There, and then the exterior can scratch over time too.
Mhm.
But that's all cosmetic. It doesn't really affect the performance unless if we've had a couple instances of the lids cracking. But for the most part, these last a lot longer. I mean, they should be able to last few years. I'm still using mine from some of our first samples actually. So they do
Mhm.
last a really long time.
Yeah, yeah. Is there any kind of like warranty kind of process if with the lid or something like that went wrong? I can't really see the bottle itself going wrong, but like,
Yeah, we have like a crash lid replacement
oh
um,
no.
discount. So if you send it in, you say, "Oh, I crashed," and that kind of thing. So yeah, we definitely we know that lid is the lid is the piece that we will sometimes need to replace, but
Hmm.
doesn't happen very often.
So, are you? I think at the end of the day, something like this, it helps more to see it in action or to like actually be able to use it or something like that. Are you doing events or something like that? How are you getting like this in front of more people?
Yeah, so we live in Vermont, and there's a lot of good gravel riding here. There's a lot of good mountain biking too, and so we participate in both mountain biking and gravel events here. We set up and every time we pour a bottle in front of somebody, eyes kind of light up, and it makes sense. And people really, I think we have we joke we have like an 80% conversion rate when people see our bottles pour because it just makes a lot of
Hmm.
sense. And so we love to be at the events. They're just like a really fun scene, and we bring our kids a lot, and we have a team here that helps us work the event. So it's always a good time on the weekend to go out and ride some of these rides and sell some bottles.
Hmm. So, yeah, I would say definitely seeing it pour. It definitely, I mean, it's so fast. So it's like the things that you would think of, like what would like be restrictive. It kind of changes your mind on that.
Yeah, I
Do
think
you
the big
feel like?
oh,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. I
No,
think
go
the
for
biggest thing for people is that like immediately your mind kind of goes to like, oh, but you can't squeeze it. Like, how do you get water out?
it. Hmm.
So when they see it, that's definitely helpful for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I would say, like, how quickly do you get over trying to squeeze it? Because I would imagine, like, the first time you use it, you're gonna try to squeeze it. It's like muscle memory, you know?
Yeah, I bigger thing is actually like getting used to the flow rate. It does deliver more water than what you're used to when you're squeezing. Um,
Uh-huh.
I think that's the bigger piece that people but have said that it takes a little time to get adjusted to. But honestly, it's like I think it's a few sips and then you kind of roll
Hmm.
over it and you get used to it.
Does it have like, does it have to be like at a certain angle before it starts pouring, or like can you control the flow by how much angle that you raise it?
The angle doesn't help as much to control it, but what you can do is like you can kind of use your mouth to control it a little bit, and then you can also Like some people have found don't even open it up all the way. They just like to have it halfway or something if they don't like having as much water come out. So it's controllable by your mouth and by the nozzle itself.
So, yeah, I would think then you can kind of just like use your tongue or something like that to kind of control
Yeah.
how much is coming out.
Yep.
Interesting. And yeah, that's definitely. I would think that the thing that I would be concerned about is yeah. First of all, you think about the squeeze thing, but the other thing is like, how do I know like how much is in there? But I guess with my regular bottles, I just know it by weight.
Yeah.
So with the bottle being heavier or metal, like when you shake it, can you like tell how much is in there still? Or
yeah, you can feel it. I think it's kind of a similar thing. Like you get used to how much your bottle weighs, and then you kind of know how much, and you can shake it and hear how much there is in there. Yeah. Also, just by the way you're drinking, you kind of can feel how much you have left in there.
Yeah, no, it's definitely like it's something interesting to like when you start thinking about all the different ways that you're kind of calculating what you have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And just it being a different medium, you're like, I don't know, you know what I mean? So
yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I think once you use it too, you'll it is good to test it and just see, because it is like it's a faster adoption, I think, than probably you'd expect.
And then any difference of like if you're using like a like carbon water bottle holder or anything like that, you don't have to worry about any extra weight or size or anything like that.
No, that's not a problem. I think, cage fit is one that's it's kind of a touchy subject in terms of like people have such personal preferences on what they like. One of our team members, Izzy, she likes king cages the most. And then my husband, Robbie, he's like, he wants it as tight as possible. So he likes the Arundel Bando cage. So we've done a lot of research into what people like, and it's like pretty hard to recommend a cage for someone, actually, because it's way more of a personal preference than you would anticipate. But we find that most people tend to like carbon or plastic cages, and that, if you're a metal cage diehard, that probably like the silicone coated version is better than the raw, for example.
Yeah. I would think most people in the mountain biking space are probably using plastic or carbon.
Yeah.
But
well, and then also a lot of people are starting to wear the hip belts now too to hold bottles, just because the geometry on bikes is getting so aggressive that it's harder to fit bottles in there sometimes.
Yeah, I definitely do that. And I tend to carry a hip pack that has a spot for bottles instead of the bladders. I don't like the ones with the bladders. I don't know. Just, the way that the weight is, and I just don't like it.
Yeah.
So, I was trying to think of different scenarios, like how I would use it or whatnot. And I'm kind of drawing a little bit of a blank right now. I was thinking about filtering and how I would do that, but that would be really no different. You just fill it up just the same as I would with anything else. So,
Yeah.
What do you think this year looks like for you guys?
So you asked about events earlier. We're going to be at Sea Otter for the first time in April. So that'll be a fun event that I've actually never been to. I've been to a lot of trade shows, but never to Sea Otter. So I think 80,000 people come to that event. So
yeah. It'll be crazy on the weekends.
Yeah. Have you been before?
Yeah, I live close to that, so
Okay.
I go every year. So I'll definitely see you there.
Cool.
Where's your booth going to be?
S83 is our booth. It's close to, I think there's like a kids ramp and an ice cream truck.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Not too far.
I know where they usually put like the kids like pump track kind of area, so it's kind of
really
right
close
around there.
Yep.
Okay.
Right near there. Yeah, and then participating in a lot of local events too. Vermonters are like very loyal to Vermonters, so we get a lot of love here in Vermont, which is always fun. But yeah, a lot of gravel rides, some mountain bike rides. We're connected with Bivo, which is the Vermont Mountain Bike Association. So we're going to be coming out with a special collaboration bottle with them April 1st. So that'll be a fun thing to get out there. And they have a series of events around the state this summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine you guys could probably do something a little like Earth Day kind of thing as well. That
Mm-hmm.
would be a little bit of a push because of you're kind of eco-friendly, right?
Yep.
I think I read on your website as well that the metal was recycled and some of the plastic or something.
Yeah, stainless steel is infinitely recyclable. So that means that you can like reuse it and reuse it and reuse it over and over and over again. So if there is ever a time that people want to recycle these, you actually can just put them right in your recycling bin and they will for sure get recycled. That's another problem with plastic is that you just we don't know exactly what gets actually recycled versus what goes to the landfill. And so that's another piece that's hard with plastic.
Mm-hmm. And aren't you using recycled material though as well to
Um,
manufacture or no?
So our lids are not recycled yet. We are working on a post-consumer waste recycled material for the future. It's actually something that's been hard to get certified by the FDA. So everything that comes into the country needs to be tested for chemicals and approved by the FDA. And so we're just waiting for that to be approved by them.
Mm-hmm. So if people are listening and they want to buy, do they just go to drinkbivo.com or can they go to Amazon or?
Yeah, we're not on Amazon yet. Drinkbivo.com, as well as you can find on our website different retailers if you want to buy something locally.
Mm-hmm. So what's your expectation with Sea Otter?
Our goal, one of our goals, like kind of basic goals this year, is just to find more people, get more people knowing about us. So we figure it's a really great place to get some visibility, both from a retailer standpoint and consumer standpoint. So yeah, just become a little more known. We're just a little over 2 years in the market, so still a lot of people have not heard about us and trying to grow the business.
Yeah. So what do you like? Are you just going to like be displaying the bottles or how are you going to pitch this to people that are walking by?
Yeah.
You know?
Actually just had this conversation earlier, just before this podcast. We have, some different ideas in mind, but nothing solidified yet. We're going to be across the row from Scratch, which we've become pretty good friends with over the last couple of years. So we're trying to do something fun with them. We have a few people that ride with Bivo. Magali Rochette, she's a cyclocross racer from Canada. She's going to be there. So hopefully a couple rides will start from our booth. And then we actually are working on a display now that shows the bottle pouring. It's on a pump. And so essentially it just looks like it's continuously pouring. So it's upside down.
Yeah.
It just kind of recirculates the water. So we're trying to get that ready for Sea Otter so that people can just as they're walking by, they can see what the bottle actually does.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. I would think that there's some way to make some kind of display that people can see the flow, because like you said, that's the thing that really makes the difference, right? That's the thing that grabs people.
Totally. Yeah. So we've been working on that. We've been trying to figure out exactly how to do that at both retail and just at events. I mean, most of the time we have enough people working that we can just keep we keep pouring back into bottles, pouring back into bottles, and just show it off. So that's not too hard at events, but for retail, we're definitely trying to figure out exactly how to just. It's eye-catching when you see it, and it totally clicks with your head. So we're just trying to figure out how to make that work at retail too.
Yeah. I can think of things in my mind, of how you would just see it, and I'm sure you guys will come up with something good there.
Yeah.
But I think the question would be in your mind would be okay, well, is that modified? You know what I mean? That would be the only thing that would be there's no way it comes out that fast. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, Sea Otter should be fun. Have you ridden in that area?
No, I haven't actually. Nope.
Are you guys thinking?
Actually, no, sorry. I mountain biked in Santa Cruz. I don't know, maybe 6 years ago. That was pretty great. Yeah.
Yeah.
We did a road trip and brought our mountain bikes down there. That was really fun.
Yeah. So are you guys you're getting in like that Wednesday before, or spending like how long is your trip for that?
Yeah, we'll be Tuesday. We'll arrive Tuesday night, set up Wednesday, and then head back on Monday. So we'll be there, set up Thursday through Sunday.
Yeah. I usually try to go on the Thursday and Friday just to like, for me, I want to talk to the
Brands.
businesses, you know, and
Yeah.
on Saturday and Sunday, it's like, it gets pretty crazy. So there's just so many people there. It's like everybody's getting pulled in 10 different directions. So Thursday and Friday is usually a lot easier to talk to people.
Nice.
But yeah, it's definitely it's an experience. I think the first time that I ever went to Sea Otter, it was almost a little bit overwhelming to me because there was so many vendors and so many people.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to like, sometimes you walk around and somebody else will come up and be like, dude, did you see this? And you're like, no. And they're like, it was right there next to, let's just say like Cali. And you're like, I was standing there talking to those guys. I didn't see that. It's just because there's so much going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, that's really exciting. I think that'll definitely give you a lot of exposure, I would imagine. So
yeah, I think so.
yeah, there's a lot of media there as well. So you know, that I think that'll really help you guys out. So
Cool.
that'd be super fun. What are you looking forward to outside of Sea Otter?
So we're planning, so Rasputitsa is a race out in East Burke, Vermont. That's, I think it's famous for, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, it was 31 degrees and like raining, snowing, and it was kind of a brutal thing. So like I think every person I've talked to that had done it that year is like, I don't know if I can make it back, but they keep doing it because it's just a fun, good challenge. So that's in East Burke, Vermont, actually the week after Sea Otter. And we're going to be doing an art show. We're sponsoring an art show. So we're going to have some artist bottles there, which will be fun, done by some different cyclists. And then, it's another good event is Ranger, which is also in Vermont in Tunbridge, where the World Fair happened. I don't know, maybe 100 years ago or something. And that's another good local ride that we'll be participating in.
So the artist bottles, those are just like special runs that you guys get done, or?
Yeah, we laser etch them. And so we've worked with different designers to create something unique for that show.
Do you guys have some kind of thing in place that if, let's just say I was a brand and I wanted to have, these made for my company or something like that, can you do that? Or is that not something that you guys do?
Yeah, we do. We started doing that just a little under a year ago. And we work with different brands and retail shops to put your own custom logo on it. And that's all done through laser etching at this point. Other than we do make in our factory as well. We do some customization, but the numbers we have to hit 1,000 units. So that's for the larger companies. But
yeah, definitely. You have to be fully committed if you want that.
Yes.
You're not getting 10 for you and your friends.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, that's really exciting. I think you guys got a lot going on, and it sounds like a full year, and definitely you're very East Coast centric. So it'll be interesting to see how Sea Otter helps you guys, expand. What made you decide to go to that event?
It's just so huge. Everybody talks about it. Izzy, who's our customization manager here in Vermont, she's gone to it with Cannondale previously. So she talked about it. Our press agency talked about it. Just different. I mean, it's such a big event. I think it's it gives us a lot of really good visibility. So we figured it was a good opportunity for us. Last year we went to Unbound Gravel in Emporia, Kansas, as well as Big Sugar in Arkansas. So it's nice for us to expand a little bit outside of local events and start getting our name out across the country.
Yeah. Do you see a higher adoption rate? It sounds like, is it gravel because you guys do that a lot yourselves, or is it that's the higher adoption rate there?
Gravel's huge in Vermont. So in here you have, I think it's over 50% of the roads are actually dirt in the state of Vermont. So there's just a lot of really good riding here. There is good mountain biking too, but and I think that's getting more and more popular. There's some really interesting things happening with like private land where
Hmm.
owners are opening up their land to allow trail systems to go through. So now we have over 1,000 trails in the state of Vermont, which is really cool. And
Hmm.
it's kind of like I don't know, it's an under known thing, I think, a little bit. The Northeast Kingdom was kind of the forerunner in the state of Vermont, where there's just tons of trails and it's a mountain biking mecca. And now that's happening a little bit in other parts of the state as well. But yeah, definitely, I think my background in cross country ski racing, just the endurance there, I guess it's just naturally brought me more towards gravel.
Hmm.
I mountain biked a lot when I lived in Portland, and up on Mount Hood and Mount St. Helens. But out here, I've definitely done more gravel riding.
Yeah, there's a lot of good riding in the Portland area, definitely.
Yeah, really good. Yeah.
Yeah. You got really good dirt up there, so
Yeah.
that's for sure. Um, Shoot, I had something I was going to ask you, and now I can't remember what it was. Is there anything that people tend to complain about?
Bottles.
Yeah.
Um, I think probably our biggest complaint is, well, there's two things, I guess. One, before we launched the insulated, some people didn't realize that they were not insulated, because I think
Hmm.
people's minds immediately, like when they see a metal bottle, they think insulated. So having the differentiator on the website has been helpful. So that's been something we've been able to overcome. And then the scratching on the exterior of the bottle, I think, is probably something that people, it's like 50-50. Some people actually appreciate the worn look, like it's gear, you're supposed to use it. And there's like
Yeah.
a lot of people are like, see this right here. This is at this like point where I was climbing up this hill in Italy and I fell over
Yeah.
and I scratched it. Like this memory in my head. So some people
Yeah.
love it. And then other people are like, but my beautiful bottle, it's just,
Right.
scratch. So it's kind of that's probably our number one complaint.
Uh-huh. Do you think that you could make some kind of sleeve for it and it would still fit in the cage, like a really light sleeve?
Yeah, maybe. I think we definitely have had some people say like they've modified, they put like a silicone band on on like one piece of it so it doesn't hit the cage as much. There's definitely things that we're working on. We honestly, one of the biggest things is just like making the exterior more durable, and we've been able to do that. It's actually, I think, 2.5 times stronger than it was originally now. So that's been great. We have a lot of people who are testing it. And we actually, one of our, Adam Morse, who's one of our ambassador, he's a big enduro racer. He was just in Mexico testing it for a month, and rode a lot of miles, and he barely scratched it. So that was promising to see. So that it's like working on the current durability as well as like into the
Yeah.
future. Will we ever make a cage? I don't know, or like another solution to attaching it to the bike.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
curious about the thermal side of it as well. I know, shoot, I can't think of the name of the bottle right now. I got one of them up there. It's the magnetic, the Fidlocks.
yes, yep,
And I like the idea of those because they're super clean where like you take them off your bike and your bike doesn't have these cages on it, right?
yep.
And but they don't have any kind of insulated bottle, and their bottles, for whatever reason, I guess because I'm used to using an insulated bottle, that like my stuff would get warm like super fast.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things that actually kept me from using the bottle, was that everything got hot too fast. And I
Interesting.
was talking to them I think it was actually at Sea Otter last year, and they were saying that they were like, I asked them, "Are you developing insulated bottle?" And they had said that they were doing some testing, but like the size thing becomes a problem because like, you end up either making the bottle bigger or the area that you can hold water smaller.
Yep, yep.
Excuse me. And they were saying that with the testing that they were doing, that just putting a sleeve on it, that they could get just as like they could make the bottle react just as well as an insulated bottle.
Hmm.
In some cases, maybe even more time, just by having some kind of sleeve on the bottle. With
Yep.
them, they're not as restricted as the space as you guys are,
Right.
but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I've actually, I mean, even like the paper around like a beer can, sometimes that can
Mhm.
insulate a little bit as well. Yeah, and there's a balance of like how much insulation do you need? Like how long are people riding for? Some
Yeah,
people ride obviously for
all
8
day.
plus
Yeah,
hours, and other
yeah,
people, but like on average, probably people are an hour and a half to 2.5 hours.
yeah, yeah. And at a certain point, it's like it doesn't have to be ice cold all day. It's just like I don't want it getting hot. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Or like too hot. So would you say that the bottle like how long does the temperature stay cold on the silver or on the single wall one? Is that comparable to a regular water bottle? Is it longer than like in my mind I would want to think that the metal would keep it cold longer, but
Yeah,
I I don't know if that's accurate.
pretty comparable to plastic for the single
Yeah.
wall. Yeah.
So you would expect about the same performance then in that aspect.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, but like I said, I mean, it's really like the taste. Like I think that's another thing that you'll think when you use it is it's like, oh wow, this actually tastes like water, like tastes like your lemon water or whatever you put in.
Mhm.
So I think that makes it just feel better drinking warmer water because it doesn't taste bad.
Yeah, yeah, you definitely get that plastic funky kind of taste at the end of the day whenever everything's
Yeah.
kind of warm in there. So
Yeah.
that's no good, especially whenever it's like those last couple of sips are usually like you're like, okay, I've been rationing myself. This is my last swallow, and now
Yeah.
it's not even gonna taste good.
Yeah.
So, so and
Yeah.
then you said you have a difference between a 21 and a 25-ounce bottle, and I just want to say this for people that are listening. 4 ounces sounds like a lot of water, but it's really not. So I have 21 and 25-ounce bottles, and realistically, it's like another swallow. I mean, would you say that I'm accurate there?
Yeah, yeah, although, I mean, it does help
Yeah,
especially if you're carrying 2 on your bike to have the
yeah,
extra 8 ounces, that's a full glass extra, so, yeah,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's like it's nominal. You know what I mean? Don't feel like you're yeah. So I just want to say that for people because it was one of those things where I know when I originally bought bottles, I had got two different sizes, and I was thinking, oh yeah, this is so much more. And then I like poured it full in the 21-ounce bottle, and then just dumped that into the 25-ounce bottle. And I was like, this is almost the same. So, but yeah, at the end of the day, it is more. So that's definitely a good thing there.
yeah.
Um, do you feel like there's anything we haven't talked about?
I don't think so. You had
Yeah.
great questions, yeah.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I also appreciate you taking the time to hang out and chat with us for the last hour and a half here about your water bottle and what you got going on. I'm really excited to try it out and also to see how you guys are doing in Sea Otter. So
Yeah,
it'll be
thanks.
fun to catch up with you there.
Yeah.
Um, what the heck was I gonna say? Oh, one of the things that I like to ask people at the end of the show is, do you watch YouTube?
Yes.
What are
Some
some of your favorite
not really,
channels?
actually, I shouldn't say I do watch much YouTube,
Yeah,
no, I
yeah.
don't watch much YouTube.
I always ask like what channels you like to watch. Just it doesn't matter if it has to do with cycling or not, because it's fun sometimes to see
Oh
if
gosh,
there's
that's a
anything.
really good stumper. I honestly, let's see. I don't really watch any YouTube channels. What I
Yeah,
do watch, so this week is like I said, Nordic skier. I'm a big fan of Nordic skiing, and this week starts World Championships, so that's coming up. So that's exciting. That's what I'll be watching this
yeah,
week and next
right
week.
on.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes. Yeah, I just kind of put it together too. When I was in Norway, I was in Tromsø, which is like the
Oh, nice.
northernmost city.
Yeah,
And I was thinking, wait a minute, she's a skier. She probably knows where that is. Most people don't, but
yeah.
yeah, that's it's kind of funny because when I went there, I never thought that it would be a place that other people in my life would know where I was talking about. And
Yeah,
I've met so many people that like have either been there or know of it, and I'm like, this is just crazy. So,
yeah.
anyways,
Pretty up there. I actually spent Christmas up in that area the year I lived there, and it was just
mhm.
crazy because it was so dark, but
Yeah,
it's fun. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's really it's very beautiful there with all the fjords and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
do you guys have any kind of like sales any time of year, or are you a company that just this is the way it stays, or?
Yeah, right now we're just honestly trying to keep up, and we haven't had to do any sales, which is good. But yeah, it's a wild ride.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. Is there free shipping when people buy from your site as well,
Under
or
$100, we have free shipping. Yep, yep.
okay? Well, there you go.
Yeah,
And would it be so? Yeah, I guess you'd have to get like 3 bottles then to be at that kind of at that price
yeah,
point.
we're 2 insulated. We also have a dust cap that is nice for especially mountain biking or gravel, wet roads. That
Mhm.
helps keep the dirt off of the nozzle. So that's another add-on you can have to put yourself over 100.
Yeah, how much is that?
Those are what are those? Those are $5. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I use a couple different products for that kind of stuff. Whenever you have a bottle on the, if you have a bike that has a cage on the bottom side of the down
Oh
tube,
yeah. Yeah.
it's definitely like
Definitely need
you're
that.
either gonna do one of two things. You're gonna, or one of a few things. You're gonna eat dirt, or you're gonna like just dump it into the clean bottle. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
you can buy a lid of some sort. So, yeah, that's definitely good to know that you guys have a product like that.
Yeah.
Well, Karina, once again, I really appreciate you taking the time and hanging out, and all of you guys that have hung out with us for the last hour and a half as well. We appreciate you too. Definitely swing by drinkbivo.com. Oh man, I nailed it that time. I know I
Got
did.
it.
Give them a look. You can check out their Instagram or their Facebook as well. But like I said earlier, if you go to their YouTube channel, there was a short on there that shows them using the product, which is one of the things that I would imagine you probably have the same thing on your Instagram and your Facebook.
Yeah.
The
Yep.
little video you guys pouring it. So that definitely is one of those things where you're like, wow, it's definitely it catches your attention. We'll say it that way. All of you guys that are here in the Northern California area, which I know a lot of my listeners are, and probably heading over to Sea Otter, definitely go swing by the tent over there and let her know that you heard of their product on the Biker Bar. That'd be cool. So anyways, I appreciate everybody out there. Thank you for those of you guys that are on Patreon. If you guys are checking out her Instagram, do me a favor and swing by mine as well at BikerB1. Give me a follow. Thumbs up if you enjoyed this. You podcast listeners, write me a review. 5 stars only. If you're thinking 3 or 4, not worth your time. Anyways, if you don't want to do any of that, just remember it only takes a bike to be a biker. Get out and be one.